Ravi always believed that the heart of a home was not in the walls or the roof but in the backyard where people could gather, laugh, and share food. His house was not the biggest on the street, and it certainly was not the fanciest, but his backyard had charm. A row of tall trees at the back gave shade, and the wooden fence kept things private. There was enough space for a grill, a table, and a few chairs. To Ravi, it was the perfect place for a Saturday barbecue. That Saturday morning began like any other weekend morning. The sun was bright, the air smelled fresh, and the neighborhood was quiet. Ravi stood at the kitchen counter preparing marinades. He chopped onions, squeezed lemons, mixed spices, and carefully placed chicken into a large bowl. He loved cooking because it reminded him of his childhood when family gatherings were filled with food and stories. But this time the barbecue was not just for fun. It was for someone very special. Ravi had invited an old family friend named Mr. Thomas. They had known each other for many years, but life had taken them in different directions. Ravi had stayed in the city, working as a teacher at a local school, while Mr. Thomas had climbed far higher in his career. He was now a Supreme Court justice, one of the most respected figures in the country. Despite his busy life, Mr. Thomas had promised to stop by Ravi's home for a quiet meal, away from formal events and away from public eyes. Ravi wanted everything to be perfect. He cleaned the backyard the night before, sweeping away dry leaves, setting up the grill, and wiping down the old wooden table. He even borrowed extra chairs from his neighbor, Mira, who always liked to help. She was kind, and unlike some of the stricter members of the homeowners association, she enjoyed seeing neighbors come together. As Ravi worked in the kitchen, his younger cousin Rohan helped outside. Rohan was a college student who often came to visit during weekends. He was energetic and cheerful, always asking questions about everything. He set up paper lanterns on the fence, even though it was still daytime. When Ravi asked why, Rohan replied with a grin that the barbecue should feel like a celebration, not just an ordinary lunch. By mid-morning the smell of spices and marinated meat filled the air. Ravi placed a bowl of salad, a tray of bread, and a pitcher of lemonade on the table outside. He wanted to balance the smoky flavors with something fresh. Rohan tested the grill, making sure the coals were heating evenly. They worked like a team, and the backyard began to look warm and inviting. Meanwhile, across the street, Clara, one of the board members of the Homeowners Association, was watching from her window. Clara was known in the neighborhood for her sharp eyes and her habit of reporting anything she considered unusual. She believed strongly in rules and order. To her, gatherings larger than a few people were a sign of trouble. She noticed Ravi moving in and out of his house, carrying trays and setting up chairs. She noticed the decorations and heard faint music playing from a small speaker. Clara frowned and made a note in her book where she recorded neighborhood activities. Back in the backyard, Rohan teased Ravi, saying the party seemed too quiet. Ravi smiled and explained that the guest list was small on purpose. He had only invited a handful of people, mostly close friends, and of course, Mr. Thomas. He wanted the afternoon to feel relaxed, not crowded. Ravi believed that sometimes fewer people made conversations deeper and food taste better. As the clock moved closer to noon, the first guests began to arrive. Mira came with a plate of homemade sweets, saying every gathering needed something sweet to end the meal. Another neighbor, Arjun, brought a bottle of sparkling juice, happy to contribute. The sound of greetings and laughter began to rise gently in the air. It was not loud, but cheerful enough to carry over the fence. Ravi felt his heart beat faster as he glanced at the driveway. Any moment now, Mr. Thomas would arrive. He wondered how the neighbors would react when they saw such an important figure in their quiet street. Ravi did not plan to announce it widely, but he knew people would notice. The thought made him nervous, but also proud. Hosting a Supreme Court justice was not an ordinary thing. Rohan kept asking questions about Mr. Thomas. He wanted to know what kind of person he was, whether he was serious all the time or whether he enjoyed small talk. Ravi explained that Mr. Thomas, despite his position, was warm and kind. He valued friendship and never forgot the people who stood by him before his success. That was why he was coming today, to spend time like old days without the weight of his title. The smell of grilled food grew stronger, spreading across the street. Children playing nearby paused to sniff the air, and even passing walkers slowed down, curious about the source. Some smiled, but Clara, watching from her porch now, grew more suspicious. She disliked when events were not formally approved by the HOA, and she began to feel the gathering was crossing into rule-breaking territory. Inside the backyard, however, the mood was completely different. Ravi placed the first skewers on the grill, the sizzle and smoke rising like music. Guests clapped jokingly, as if it were a performance. Rohan poured lemonade into glasses and handed them out. Everyone relaxed, chatting about work, family, and the pleasant weather. For Ravi, each sound and smell carried meaning. The laughter was proof that friendship mattered more than formality. The smoke was a reminder of traditions passed from one generation to another. The taste of food would soon bind everyone at the table. He felt grateful, even before Mr. Thomas arrived, because moments like this made life rich. When the clock struck 1, a black car slowed down in front of the house. Rohan noticed first and whispered to Ravi. Guests looked toward the gate, curious about the new arrival. The car door opened, and out stepped Mr. Thomas, wearing a simple suit but carrying an air of dignity that made people pause. He smiled warmly, walking toward Ravi with open arms. Ravi greeted him with respect and joy, and the two embraced like old friends. Guests were quietly surprised, some whispering to each other as they recognized the important visitor. But Mr. Thomas quickly broke the formality, asking for a plate and joking that he was hungry from the long drive. The atmosphere eased again, and everyone welcomed him as if he were just another neighbor joining for food. As the grill smoked and laughter continued, Clara across the street finally reached for her phone. She had decided that enough was enough. To her, the gathering was breaking the peace, and she would not allow it. She dialed the police, unaware of the true identity of the man who had just entered Ravi's backyard. The stage was set for an afternoon that the neighborhood would never forget. The afternoon sun hung high in the sky, shining over Ravi's backyard. The smell of grilled food was rich in the air, and laughter floated gently above the fence. Ravi was moving back and forth between the grill and the table, checking the food and making sure everyone was comfortable. Guests were enjoying themselves, sipping lemonade, chatting, and occasionally teasing Rohan, who had become the self-appointed helper for the day. At the head of the table sat Mr. Thomas, the guest of honor. He spoke in a calm voice, asking everyone about their families, their jobs, and their interests. Despite being a Supreme Court justice, he did not carry himself with distance or formality. Instead, he listened closely, nodding with interest, and often adding thoughtful remarks. When Rohan nervously asked him about his work, Mr. Thomas smiled and said that the hardest part of his job was remembering to remain human in every decision. That answer made everyone pause with respect, and then the conversation carried on with even more warmth. The guests felt honored to sit with him, yet Ravi had asked everyone not to make the day about titles or positions. He wanted Mr. Thomas to relax as an old friend, not as a public figure. For a while, that was exactly what happened. Plates filled with grilled chicken, vegetables, bread, and salad. Children from next door leaned against the fence, hoping to catch a glimpse of the food, and Ravi quickly made them small plates too. It was simple kindness, and it made the children smile brightly. But across the street, Clara watched with growing irritation. She had been pacing her living room, peeking through her curtains, and muttering under her breath. She believed firmly in the rules of the Homeowners Association. According to her, gatherings larger than 6 people required written notice to the board. She did not count carefully, but from her window, she saw more than 6 heads. That was enough for her. Clara opened her small notebook again and wrote down the date and time. She noted the music, which although soft, was still playing. She noted the decorations that Rohan had hung, calling them unapproved additions. She noted the smoke from the grill, which she described as possible fire hazard. In her mind, the evidence was building. She picked up her phone and called the HOA president first. But the president, who was enjoying his own weekend, simply told her that minor gatherings were not worth interfering with. Clara did not like that answer. She wanted immediate action. So she dialed the police department, reporting that there was a gathering in violation of neighborhood rules. She explained in her sharp tone that there might be unlicensed cooking, noise disturbance, and too many visitors. Within minutes, a patrol car was dispatched. Back in Ravi's backyard, the atmosphere was light and cheerful. Mira told a story from her school days, making everyone laugh. Arjun explained his new business idea, and Mr. Thomas listened with genuine curiosity. Ravi kept the grill going, enjoying the way food brought people together. He did not notice the tension building across the street, nor did he know about Clara's phone call. Rohan, however, noticed Clara pacing outside her house. He leaned toward Ravi and whispered that she seemed upset. Ravi only shook his head and said not to worry. He believed that if you were respectful and caused no harm, there was nothing to fear. His focus remained on serving his guests. The sound of laughter grew again when Mr. Thomas shared a light memory from his early career. He explained how, during his first year as a lawyer, he had once dropped his notes in front of a judge and scrambled to pick them up. The way he described it, with humor and humility, made everyone at the table laugh openly. Even the children at the fence giggled, though they did not understand the details. The black patrol car rolled into the neighborhood at that exact moment. It moved slowly, its presence quiet but noticeable. Guests turned their heads slightly, wondering if it was passing through. Ravi looked up from the grill, surprised to see the car stop in front of his house. The officers inside stepped out, adjusting their uniforms as they approached the gate. The laughter faded into silence. Guests exchanged uncertain glances. Rohan's eyes widened, and Mira set down her glass carefully. Ravi walked forward with calm steps, trying not to show his confusion. He greeted the officers politely, asking if everything was all right. The taller officer explained that they had received a call about a possible disturbance. He said it kindly, without accusation, but the words made Ravi's heart sink a little. He had worked hard to keep the gathering respectful and quiet, and now it seemed someone thought otherwise. Before Ravi could respond, Mr. Thomas stood up from the table. His calm presence drew the attention of everyone. He walked toward the officers with a gentle smile, his voice steady as he thanked them for coming and assured them that everything was under control. The officers blinked in recognition, and one of them straightened his posture. It was clear they knew exactly who he was. The mood shifted instantly. Guests whispered to each other, realizing the weight of the moment. Ravi stood quietly, watching as Mr. Thomas shook hands with the officers like an old friend. He explained that he was simply visiting his longtime companion for a private meal, nothing more. The officers relaxed, nodding with respect. They asked a few formal questions about noise and safety, but their tone was light. They seemed almost apologetic for interrupting. Ravi answered honestly, pointing out that the music was soft, the food was being cooked safely, and the gathering was small. Everything matched what they observed with their own eyes. From across the street, Clara stood frozen near her gate. She could see the exchange clearly now. Her plan to disrupt the gathering had taken a turn she had never expected. The guest of honor was not just a neighbor's friend but one of the most important figures in the nation's legal system. Her complaint, which she thought would prove her dedication to order, now made her appear impatient and hasty. In the backyard, the officers shared a few polite words before stepping back toward their car. They told Ravi and Mr. Thomas to enjoy the afternoon and assured them there was no problem. Ravi thanked them, still a little shaken but grateful that the matter had ended peacefully. The officers drove away slowly, leaving behind a wave of curiosity and relief among the guests. Mira broke the silence first with a soft laugh, saying that it was not every day police officers came to a barbecue only to meet a Supreme Court justice. The tension lifted, replaced by smiles and renewed conversation. Ravi returned to the grill, though his hands trembled slightly at first. Mr. Thomas clapped him on the shoulder, reminding him that good food and good company were stronger than unnecessary complaints. The gathering continued, but now with a new sense of importance. Guests felt they were part of a story that would be remembered for years. Even Rohan, who was usually restless, sat still for a moment, thinking about what had just happened. He realized that respect and dignity could change any situation, and that rules, while important, should never be used without understanding. As the sun began to lower in the sky, the laughter returned. Plates were refilled, glasses clinked together, and children continued to giggle at the fence. The barbecue, which had started as a simple plan to bring friends together, had now become something far greater. It had shown how quickly suspicion could turn into admiration, and how one person's hasty decision could shift the mood of an entire street. But the day was not over yet. More surprises waited, and the story of Ravi's backyard barbecue was far from finished. The police car had rolled away, leaving the neighborhood strangely quiet. Guests at Ravi's barbecue slowly returned to their plates, though their eyes still carried the memory of what had just happened. They whispered to each other, half amazed and half amused, that a simple backyard gathering had drawn the attention of officers. The surprise had already made the afternoon feel unusual, but everyone sensed that the day still carried more to come. Mr. Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, returned to his seat with a gentle smile. He did not seem shaken at all. In fact, he laughed softly, saying that this was the most unusual welcome he had experienced in many years. His calmness spread through the group like sunlight after clouds. Soon the guests were laughing again, though this time with an extra sparkle in their eyes. Ravi stood at the grill, turning skewers of chicken and brushing them with sauce. The flames rose gently, and the smell of spice and smoke filled the air once again. But inside his heart, he felt a mix of relief and nervous pride. He had worried the visit of the officers would embarrass his guest, but Mr. Thomas had handled it with dignity and kindness. Ravi could not help thinking that this moment showed why his friend had risen to such an important position. Rohan, always full of energy, rushed around refilling glasses with lemonade and carrying extra plates. But every now and then, he glanced at the street. He noticed neighbors slowing down their walks, pausing to peek toward the backyard. Some pretended to check their mailboxes, others bent down to tie their shoes, but their eyes lingered. The sight of a patrol car earlier had drawn their curiosity, and now they wanted to know what was happening. Inside the backyard, Mira tried to lighten the mood further by serving her homemade sweets. She passed around small plates with bright-colored treats, explaining the recipe in her cheerful way. Even Mr. Thomas accepted one, thanking her warmly and saying it reminded him of desserts his mother used to make. The conversation grew easier again, and laughter began to rise like before. Yet across the street, Clara was not laughing. She stood on her porch, arms folded tightly. She had expected the police visit to end the gathering, but instead, it had turned into a moment of pride for Ravi. She felt the situation slipping out of her control. Her neighbors were clearly impressed, and Clara disliked feeling overshadowed. She muttered to herself, wondering how long the barbecue would continue. Back inside the backyard, another car approached. This time it was not a patrol car but a sleek black sedan that stopped near Ravi's driveway. Guests looked at each other curiously. Ravi froze for a moment, wondering if this was another surprise. The back door of the sedan opened slowly, and out stepped a tall man in a neat suit followed by a woman carrying a folder. Ravi's eyes widened when he recognized them. The man was not just any visitor. He was a colleague of Mr. Thomas, another respected figure from the legal world, though not as well known to the public. The woman appeared to be his assistant, carrying notes and schedules. The guests murmured with surprise. They had expected only one important guest, but now it seemed Ravi's backyard had turned into a gathering of remarkable people. Mr. Thomas rose from his chair immediately, greeting his colleague with genuine warmth. The two shook hands firmly, laughing as if they had not seen each other in months. Ravi hurried forward, welcoming them politely and offering them seats at the table. He was careful not to show his shock, but inside, he wondered how many more surprises the day would bring. His backyard, once just a quiet corner for family meals, now felt like the stage of an unexpected event. The new guests blended quickly into the group. They praised Ravi's cooking and joked that it was better than any meal served at official dinners. Rohan proudly served them drinks, trying to act calm but clearly excited. Even the children at the fence stared wide-eyed, sensing the importance of the visitors though they did not know their names. Meanwhile, the atmosphere around the table grew more lively. Conversations flowed easily, moving from personal memories to broader topics. Mr. Thomas and his colleagues spoke of their early years, sharing stories of struggle and perseverance. Guests listened closely, inspired by how ordinary beginnings could lead to extraordinary paths. Ravi felt proud to host such voices of wisdom in his simple backyard. Clara, watching from across the street, felt her frustration grow. She saw the new arrivals stepping out of the sedan and joining the table with ease. She could not hear the conversation, but she could see the respect on everyone's faces. Instead of being shut down, Ravi's gathering was becoming even more significant. Clara tapped her notebook with impatience, unsure what more she could do. As the sun shifted lower in the sky, the backyard glowed with golden light. The lanterns Rohan had hung earlier began to shine softly, adding charm to the setting. Guests leaned back in their chairs, sipping juice and enjoying the gentle breeze. The atmosphere was almost magical, a perfect blend of friendship, food, and unexpected honor. Ravi noticed that Mr. Thomas looked truly relaxed. His usual life was filled with formality, heavy decisions, and public attention. But here, in this backyard with simple food and honest company, he seemed lighter. He laughed more often, his eyes sparkled brighter, and his posture loosened. Ravi realized that giving his friend a moment of peace was worth every worry he had faced. The children at the fence giggled again, pointing at the lanterns. Ravi invited them inside the backyard, and with shy smiles, they joined the gathering. They were given small plates of food, and soon they sat together in a corner, enjoying the meal. Mr. Thomas even took a moment to kneel down and speak kindly to them, asking about their studies and dreams. The children would later tell their parents proudly that they had spoken to a justice, though at that moment, they only felt his kindness. As the evening drew closer, more neighbors peeked out of their houses. Some waved politely, others whispered to one another. The street, usually quiet on a Saturday afternoon, was alive with curiosity. It was clear that Ravi's barbecue had become the most talked about event in the neighborhood. Inside the backyard, the mood remained warm and respectful. Guests felt they were part of something rare, something that would be remembered not only for the food but for the gathering of minds and hearts. Ravi, standing at the grill with smoke rising gently around him, felt grateful. He had not planned for such grandeur, yet life had brought it to his doorstep. But the day was not finished. Just as plates were being cleared for dessert, another knock sounded at the gate. Guests turned their heads once more, wondering who could possibly arrive now. Ravi walked toward the gate slowly, his heart thumping with both nerves and anticipation. The story of the backyard barbecue was about to take another turn. The soft knock on the gate made the guests pause. Forks and spoons rested quietly on plates, and conversation slowed. Ravi, still holding a serving spoon, walked toward the gate with steady steps. His mind raced with questions. Who could it be this time? The police had already come and gone. Mr. Thomas and his colleague were already inside. Could another guest have found their way to this unlikely gathering? He opened the gate slowly, and standing there was a middle-aged man in a crisp shirt, holding a small gift bag. His smile was warm, but his face carried a touch of shyness, as though he was unsure if he was arriving at the right place. Ravi blinked in surprise, then smiled back, recognizing him instantly. It was another old friend from his college days, someone he had not seen in years. The man introduced himself politely to the group as Rajiv, explaining that he had been passing through town and heard from a mutual friend that Ravi was hosting a barbecue. He thought it would be a nice chance to reconnect. Ravi welcomed him warmly, offering him a chair at the table. What Ravi did not know at first was that Rajiv now worked as a senior advisor in the government. His presence was less public than Mr. Thomas, but still important. When Mr. Thomas saw him, he rose immediately to greet him. The two shook hands like colleagues who respected one another. Guests looked at each other, astonished once more. What had started as a quiet afternoon in a small backyard was quickly becoming a gathering of remarkable people. It seemed as if fate had decided to place this little street in the spotlight. The mood around the table brightened again. Rajiv set down his gift bag, which contained fresh fruit from a local market, and joked that he had come only for the food. Laughter followed, easing the surprise. Ravi quickly filled his plate and handed him a glass of lemonade. As the new guest joined the circle, the conversation grew richer. Stories of law, leadership, and responsibility flowed naturally, yet the tone remained friendly rather than formal. The ordinary neighbors listened with amazement. They were sitting just a few steps away from people whose names appeared in newspapers and whose decisions shaped the nation. But what impressed them most was not the importance of the guests, but their simplicity. Mr. Thomas laughed like a neighbor, not like a judge. Rajiv shared childhood memories, not official speeches. Their presence made the backyard feel both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Children at the corner giggled, whispering about how special the day had become. Even Rohan, who had been excited from the start, grew quiet for a while, simply observing. He realized he was witnessing something rare, something he would remember for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Clara across the street grew restless. She had been standing on her porch for hours, unable to leave her post. Every new arrival deepened her frustration. She had hoped to stop the barbecue, but instead, it had turned into an event that made Ravi look admired and respected. Her notes in the little book now felt pointless. She wanted to march across the street and demand answers, but the sight of official cars and important guests kept her frozen. Back in the backyard, Mira noticed Ravi's quiet expression. He was smiling, but his eyes showed the weight of responsibility. She whispered to him that everything was going perfectly and that he should enjoy the moment. Ravi nodded. Inside, he felt proud, but he also understood that such honor came with careful balance. His role was to make everyone feel welcome, no matter who they were. The lanterns glowed brighter as the evening deepened. The golden light of sunset touched the trees, and a soft breeze carried the smell of food across the street. Neighbors passing by slowed down even more now, unable to hide their curiosity. Some greeted politely, while others simply stood for a moment before continuing their walk. At the table, Mr. Thomas lifted his glass of juice and gave a short, heartfelt toast. He spoke not of titles or positions, but of friendship. He thanked Ravi for reminding him that life's greatest joys came not from formal events or grand halls but from simple meals shared with people who cared. The words touched everyone deeply. Even the children grew quiet, sensing the sincerity. The guests clapped softly, raising their glasses in return. Ravi felt his heart swell with gratitude. He had wanted only to cook food and welcome an old friend, yet the day had turned into something far greater. After the toast, conversation turned to lighter topics. Guests joked about their favorite foods, told funny stories from school days, and teased Rohan about his restless energy. Even Rajiv, usually serious in his work, laughed heartily when he recalled a mistake he had made in his first job. The atmosphere grew warm again, like a family gathering. But the greatest moment of the evening came when Mr. Thomas stood up and walked toward the children. He asked them about their dreams and encouraged them to study hard. He told them that greatness was not about titles, but about kindness, honesty, and effort. His words, though simple, left a lasting impression. The children nodded eagerly, their eyes wide with admiration. Ravi watched this with pride. He knew that those children would carry this memory for the rest of their lives. They would remember that one evening in a small backyard when a man of great responsibility spoke to them like a friend. Meanwhile, Clara finally stepped off her porch and walked a few steps toward the street. She looked at the glowing lanterns, the laughter, and the calm faces of the guests. She wanted to find fault, but deep inside, she felt a quiet shame. The gathering she had tried to stop was harmless, joyful, and even inspiring. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had been too quick to judge. Back at the table, dessert was served. Mira's sweets were passed around again, along with fresh fruit from Rajiv's bag. The simple flavors felt perfect after the long day. Guests leaned back in their chairs, their voices soft but happy. The lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, and the street outside grew darker as evening arrived fully. Ravi finally allowed himself to relax completely. He looked around at the faces of his guests, both old friends and new surprises. He felt that his backyard had become something more than a place for food. It had become a place of connection, of learning, of laughter, and of unity. The reveal of who his guests truly were had surprised everyone, but what mattered most was not their titles. What mattered was the way they shared their time, their kindness, and their stories. As night settled in, Ravi knew this day would live in the memory of the neighborhood forever. But he also sensed that the story was not finished. Something still lingered in the air, a promise of another twist waiting to arrive. The lanterns swayed softly as evening wrapped the street in quiet darkness. Ravi's backyard glowed with warm light, the gentle hum of conversation filling the air. Plates were nearly empty now, the grill had cooled, and the scent of food had been replaced by the sweet aroma of fruit and desserts. Guests leaned back in their chairs, satisfied not only by the meal but also by the rare company they had enjoyed. Mr. Thomas sat comfortably, his suit jacket folded neatly over his chair. His colleague and Rajiv sat beside him, still sharing small stories that blended wisdom with humor. Mira smiled as she collected dishes, refusing to let Ravi do all the work. Rohan carried the used cups, moving quickly but stealing glances at the important guests, as if trying to record every detail in his memory. The children who had joined earlier sat cross-legged near the fence, holding small lanterns that Rohan had handed them. Their faces glowed in the light, their eyes wide as they whispered to one another about how they would tell their friends in school that they had met such great people in a simple backyard. Ravi stood for a moment, taking it all in. The laughter, the glowing lights, the calm breeze, everything felt perfect. Yet his mind returned to the moment earlier when the police had arrived. He could not shake the thought of how quickly one complaint had turned joy into tension. Though the evening had recovered beautifully, he knew there was a lesson hidden in all of this. Across the street, Clara still lingered on her porch. The neighborhood was quiet except for Ravi's backyard, but instead of looking like a disturbance, it looked peaceful. The glow of lanterns and the soft voices made it appear almost magical. She had her little notebook in her hand, but the pages she had filled with complaints now seemed foolish. Watching from the shadows, Clara began to realize that she had misjudged the situation from the beginning. Inside the backyard, Mr. Thomas rose from his chair once more. He looked around the table, his eyes resting on each face with gentle attention. Then he spoke, his voice calm but steady, carrying enough weight that even the children grew still. He said that days like this reminded him why he worked so hard in his position. It was not for power, not for recognition, but to protect the simple joys of ordinary people. A meal with friends, laughter with neighbors, kindness to children, these were the things that truly mattered. He reminded everyone that laws and rules were important, but they were made to serve people, not to frighten them. The guests nodded, listening closely. His words were simple, yet they touched something deep. Rohan's eyes sparkled as he held onto every sentence, while Mira smiled knowingly, as though she had felt the same truth in her own life. Even Ravi, who had known his friend for years, felt renewed respect. After the short speech, there was a silence, not awkward but thoughtful. Then Arjun clapped softly, and soon others joined. The moment was not grand, but it was powerful. It tied together everything they had experienced that day: the visit from the police, the surprise arrivals, the quiet strength of friendship. Ravi looked at Mr. Thomas with gratitude. He knew that his friend had not only honored the meal but had also given the entire neighborhood a gift of wisdom. When dessert ended, the guests slowly began to prepare to leave. They hugged Ravi, thanking him for the food and for the chance to be part of something so rare. Rajiv promised to visit again and left behind kind words for Rohan, encouraging him to continue his studies. Mr. Thomas's colleague gave a warm handshake to everyone before stepping into the black sedan. Finally, Mr. Thomas himself prepared to leave. He hugged Ravi tightly, telling him that this day had given him more rest and joy than many weeks of formal events. He thanked him not for the food alone, but for the spirit of welcome. Ravi promised that the backyard would always be open for him whenever he wished to return. As the cars rolled away, the backyard grew quiet again. The lanterns flickered, the plates were stacked, and the chairs stood empty. Only Ravi, Rohan, and Mira remained, cleaning slowly but smiling as they did. They spoke softly about the day, each of them aware that they had been part of something unforgettable. Meanwhile, Clara finally closed her notebook. She walked back inside her house, her steps slower than usual. For the first time, she felt unsure of her strict approach to neighborhood rules. She realized that what she had called a disturbance was actually a moment of joy that brought people together. She promised herself, quietly, that next time she would think before she judged. The following week, the story of Ravi's barbecue spread across the neighborhood. Children told their friends about meeting important guests. Neighbors who had peeked from windows now approached Ravi with friendly smiles, asking about the evening. Even those who had not been there felt the ripple of pride that such an event had happened on their street. The HOA meeting that month was different too. Clara sat quietly while others spoke. Some members even suggested organizing a community barbecue in the park, inspired by Ravi's gathering. Instead of objecting, Clara raised her hand and agreed. She had learned her lesson, and though she did not admit her mistake aloud, her actions showed she had changed. For Ravi, life returned to normal, but in his heart, he carried the memory like a treasure. He did not brag or boast. He continued teaching at the school, walking in the evenings, and tending his backyard. But every time he stepped outside and saw the wooden table or the small grill, he smiled. He knew that in that very spot, something remarkable had taken place. Rohan, on the other hand, spoke about it constantly. To his friends, to his professors, to anyone who would listen, he told the story of the day when important guests came to his cousin's backyard. His enthusiasm never faded, and though some laughed at his excitement, others listened with wide eyes, inspired by the simple truth that great people could be found in ordinary places. The memory lived not only in the hearts of those who had attended but also in the quiet pride of the street itself. The neighborhood was the same as before, yet somehow different. It carried the spirit of unity, kindness, and understanding. And so, the story of Ravi's backyard barbecue was passed around, told and retold, not as a tale of complaints or rules, but as a lesson. A lesson that joy could be found in small places, that kindness could ease tension, and that respect could turn an ordinary afternoon into a memory that would shine forever.